Food waste is a huge problem. People are throwing away tons of food for no reason. We need to fix this waste problem as fast as possible. Over 40 million tons of food is wasted every year. North America is currently making the most amount of waste in the world. In America, approximately 1 pound of food is wasted per person. If that adds up, it can go higher to an astronomical level. To help with the future, we have some options to help decrease food waste. One problem we have is that we don't know if anyone will help decrease the amount of waste. Some of the options we have are to use fewer amounts of excessive food, compost leftover food, and think of everything you do that affects food waste and try to change. The problem is so big that there are places that specialize in making less food waste. These places are restaurants that don't make any waste and compost their leftover food. There aren't enough people that know about this problem, and we need to make this problem known to everyone and explain that if we don't help solve this problem, we'll run out of food and life on Earth will be very difficult. I'm sure that most people have the mindset that other people are going to help solve this problem so they don't have to do anything, but this is really not true. Other people have the same attitude and they won't do anything either, and it just becomes a loop of people not doing anything to solve the problem, and it's not okay, and we have to fix it.
New York City sends 4 million tons of waste to landfill every year. Almost a third of that waste is food. Food waste degrades into landfills, which produces methane, a harmful greenhouse gas. Not only does this food waste affect the environment, but it severely affects the people who can't afford food. The waste could have been given to the people who really need it, yet instead it falls into the landfills, causing more and more pollution in our city. Especially now that COVID-19 has spread, more and more people are conserving food for their families, hoarding the stores and shops that carry it. And many people have lost their jobs due to this pandemic, causing them to lose their homes and ways of living. One way to reduce this conflict is to redistribute food that is not eaten or will not be eaten. This can be given to many people who couldn't afford food. It can provide them for days, knowing the amount of food waste is rather high. Another way to reduce food waste is to maintain portion control. This doesn't necessarily provide the hungry, but it does reduce the amount of pollution from past food scraps. In conclusion, we can all take part in helping to decrease the amount of food waste in our community. You will not only be helping out the environment, you may also be saving someone's life.
Imagine a society where everyone grows crops in their own home. This documentary will answer all questions you have or ever had about hydroponics. Hydroponics is a method of growing crops that are used all across the world. It can be used on rooftops or extra space. Hydroponic systems can go horizontal or vertical, which can take up less space than actual farming. There are many different ways that you can grow crops in hydroponics. One system is a tower garden. This is where the plants grow horizontal up a tower, which is water that runs up and down the middle to hydrate the roots. Hydroponics is a more efficient way to grow crops compared to farming. This is because hydroponic systems are grown inside. This takes up less space and can use alternate resources to grow the plants. Traditional farming is less efficient because it takes a longer time to grow. It is scientifically proven that crops that are grown in hydroponic systems will grow twice as fast. Now we'll talk about urban agriculture. Urban agriculture is when gardeners start farms and gardens in urban places. Urban farming is beneficial because people can turn their communities into pretty urban farms. They can grow crops in empty, run-down lots or empty space throughout their cities. This is a picture of one of many empty areas in cities around the world that get turned into gardens. Urban farming is the practice of cultivating and giving out food in many urban areas. This is more efficient because it can turn places into beautiful gardens. Overall, hydroponics and urban farming are both more efficient ways to grow crops in modern society.
Not everyone has access to the food the way some of us do. In fact, there are a lot of more hungry people in the world than we thought. Food insecurity contributes to world hunger and is a very terrible thing. Food insecurity means the people who need food can't have it because of their current income or their disability to get to places where food is sold. 6 years ago, 17.4 million families in America were food insecure at one point in the year. That number is almost as much as the population of the country of the Netherlands, and in the 6 years since, the number only could have grown to a larger amount. Time of a global pandemic, income is even harder to earn and more dangerous to go out and try to earn money. A study from the website feedingamerica.org suggests that if poverty and unemployment rates rise in America, there could be an added 9.9 million people who are food insecure. We can donate to these people and the places they get food from, but instead of donating cans, you should donate money to food banks instead of fresh produce or canned foods. Canned foods are not very healthy, and fresh foods seem like a good idea at first, but they have a shorter shelf life. Would donate money, the food banks could spend the money on food that people want and actually like. This also helps reduce the amount of food waste because they won't be throwing out the food they dislike, and it gives people who do need food a solution for their hunger.
Food, something all people need but not everyone can afford. The problem of food pricing is such a brutal dilemma, yet it's so embedded in modern society that solving it is nearly unfathomable. So, how can we attempt to tackle this problem? First, we need to analyze the ridiculous statistics regarding this worldwide problem, and then look at the effectiveness of current strategies. Let's find out how much food is wasted every year in the world. According to en.reset.org, 1.4 billion US tons of food is wasted per year worldwide. America wastes around 80 billion pounds of this numeral, or 40 million US tons of food a year. Do you even know how many Big Macs that would be? I don't, but if you do the math, you'll probably see a lot of zeros. Prior to watching this video, you may have heard stories about people starving in Africa, plagued by food deserts and drought. And while you may think that you can't do anything about those tragedies, the average American wastes around a pound of food per day. That means for your weekly shopping trip, a large percentage of the food you buy is going to end up in the garbage. That percentage of food that ended up going to a landfill could actually have fed multiple of the starving families mentioned earlier. But honestly, nobody's perfect, and while it's possible to clean up your act in that area, there are other ways to help reduce food waste. Some of these are even related to minimizing your waste footprint, as discussed with the shopping example before. One of these ways is to know what you're cooking each week. Whether it's steak and potatoes or boxed mac and cheese, this can help you plan what you need to buy while you shop. You can also know who you're cooking for and when you're cooking so that you can judge how many of each item you need and if the item will be fresh by the time you cook it. One of the main reasons for food waste among households is food going rotten and not looking appealing. But you can help stop that trend with a little extra planning. That way, you spend less money and have more food, all while decreasing food waste at the same time. This strategy, while effective in supermarkets, can also be used in farm stands, which leads us to our next strategy. Another way to do your part in this fight is to buy equally from supermarkets and farm stands. Doing this can ensure that local gardens and farms stay in business, and these patches of farmland are bound to produce fresh and healthy food. That means that you're supporting a local business and getting better food. Though many people don't live near a farm stand, you can also grow your own produce, which can be made in more places than a supermarket can. This way, you can choose your quantity without having to buy it in the amounts that packaging would require, and it'll be more filling than buying a bunch of artificial foods and routinely eating them. This also is an exceptional way to reduce food waste because your food is there when you need it, and you'll learn to love your food however it looks. In fact, this leads us to the last way to reduce food waste in the video, but certainly not the world, which is to step up and know your facts. Most foods don't taste worse when they look different than the norm. But regardless of this, appearance is one of the leading causes of food waste. This is because customers won't buy different looking products, and the store will have no choice but to throw them away. But you, knowing your facts, could help make a change and buy the food no one else will. You'll probably be surprised by how good it is. Using these tools, you can make some serious difference in the world, and make a difference in your own nutrition as well. Good luck in your journey to help stop food waste, and your journey to discover more possibilities in the field of produce.
What is hydroponics and urban gardening? That's a good question. Many people don't know what hydroponics and urban gardening are. So today, I'm going to be telling you all about it. When I think of farming, I think of farmers, tractors, fields, and soil. Hydroponics is a different type of farming that doesn't involve tractors, fields, and soil. Hydroponics does have farmer scientists, in fact, and you can be one too. The exact definition of hydroponics is the process of growing plants in sand, gravel, or liquid with added nutrients but without soil. The goal of urban gardening and hydroponics is to reduce carbon footprints. This form of gardening is more efficient, better for the environment, and the produce is fresh and tasty. Traditional farming can be difficult for many reasons. One of the main ones is a switch in seasons and weather. When the seasons change, the weather conditions change and can hurt the crops. With hydroponics, you can do it anywhere, anytime, without having to worry about what you'll have to do when it starts to snow. Anyone can have a hydroponic system in their own home. You can grow your own fresh produce. There are multiple systems you can use in hydroponics. There's the NFT, the nutrient film technique, VCS, vine crop system, tower garden, and more. All of these systems produce fresh and tasty crops without soil. How, you may ask? Well, I'll show you. These systems are different but similar. Something they all have in common is a water basin with added nutrients. Since there is no soil, the plants need to get nutrients from somewhere else. This water then flows throughout the systems to provide nutrients and water for the plants. There are so many perks to doing hydroponics. Produce is yummier, it's fun to take care of the plants, it's better for the environment, fresh produce directly from your own home, and so much more. You should definitely try out hydroponics. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Food waste is one of the biggest problems all over the world, but especially in the US. Each year, 80 billion pounds of food is wasted in the US alone, and the average amount of food that an American wastes is 219 pounds. Not only is so much food bad for the environment because of all of the unbalance that it causes due to tons of energy and nutrients being wasted and then not being able to be recycled, but wasting tons of food is also inconsiderate because of the number of families all over the world who are food insecure. As of 2020, because of the pandemic and so many people losing their jobs, the number of people that are food insecure has jumped from 135 million to 265 million. This should be a waking point for society. Society should realize that now is the time to make this change and the time to resort our priorities to what matters. It is not just the current day that lots of people in the US are food insecure. Throughout all of America's history, people have been food insecure for different reasons. It might have been the economy or available resources, but it has always been something. For example, during the Civil War, prices went up, the economy and resources went down, people couldn't afford food, and people were doing everything they could to find the cheap replacements for food and to make food they had last. Overall, food waste is not a thing of the past. It is not something that should be overlooked or passed by. It is not just an issue for America. Food waste is a global issue and something that needs to be changed. If you want to help food waste, you can shop smart and not excessively, keep leftovers, learn to preserve your food properly, pack your lunch, whether you're going to school or work, and teach others about food waste. But the most important thing to remember is that a little change can make a ripple in the world.
Hunger is a real problem in the U.S., especially in big cities like New York, where about 1.1 million people struggle with food insecurity. One way New York City is dealing with this problem is with soup kitchens and food banks. One food bank in particular has been stepping up to help all New Yorkers who deal with hunger. The Food Bank for New York City, founded over 36 years ago, is employing both old, tried-and-true techniques to distributing food, as well as more recent innovations such as urban farming. One of the main focuses of this food bank is distributing meals to food deserts all over the city. The organization keeps a complete food gap map, as they call it, to to track which sections of the city need food the most. Then they use their huge warehouse capacity, over 90,000 square feet, to keep food until it's ready for distribution. Next, the food gets sent out in trucks to over 1,000 charities in the city to help get meals to all New Yorkers in need. This food bank also uses the more traditional strategy of passing out food on the premises to people who come by. Using these two methods, the food bank creates over 80 million meals a year. That's a lot more people who won't go hungry. Another method of getting more food to New Yorkers that this food bank will employ is called green sidewalks. This project is still being developed and has not been made operational yet, but is essentially an urban gardening program that will use hydroponics to serve the neediest communities to safely distribute fresh produce, as the website states. This program will greatly assist the effort to get fresh food to all New Yorkers. This food bank does more than just provide food, however. It also teaches people in the city how to maintain proper nutrition and cook healthy foods. They have set up programs in schools to teach kids how to eat healthy, as well as having outreach to their community to help parents make healthy choices for themselves and their families. Ultimately, this food bank is doing a great service to people in New York, but it needs your empathy and compassion to continue. So many New Yorkers are struggling, and those who aren't can make a big difference in their lives by taking a few simple steps. You can go to www.foodbanknyc.org to get information on how to help. They have food and money donation programs as well as volunteering opportunities. Imagine how you would feel if you couldn't put food on the table for your family and then take action to help make hunger history.
What nourishes us? I mean, not just literally, but what do people need besides food to survive? How do people get access to the things that nourish them? And what about the people that can't? These are questions we should constantly be asking ourselves, especially in this time of COVID, when these inequalities are really exposed. So, you probably don't want to just hear some sad facts about this terrible situation our society has been put in. But the sad truth is that everyone should know how they are contributing to this situation. 40% of food produced in America never gets eaten, and on average, a person wastes 20 pounds worth of food per month. If this is not convincing enough, hear this. 91% of people throw food out because it is past the sell-by date, which is not even accurate. This means that we are all contributing to the problem. Yep, you, the people around you, and heck, even me. I know this is disappointing, but there are really simple things anyone can do to fix this. Whether it be eating smaller portions as to not waste food, or educating others on this issue of food waste. Our actions accumulated together can make a huge difference. Why does this matter? There is definitely a clear reason that matters. We should not be wasting food. But what else will this have an impact on? Today, we hear so much about climate change. There are so many clear causes. However, have you expected throwing out one too many half-eaten burgers might be contributing to this? Well, the truth is, your food waste is hurting the environment. Your leftovers get thrown out and the waste is transported to a landfill. All of this waste builds up. As a result of the density, there is no way for this waste to decompose. As a result, we see a buildup of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas that causes climate change. We should really be conscious of this. I mean, who knows what will happen if we continue to handle food irresponsibly? Well, we know that we will have a worse future. We can make sure to compost leftover fruits or not worry too much about how the fruits and vegetables look, as the looks of them do not determine the taste. This will make a huge difference, which is something I think everyone wants. If you do not want a better future, you might as well stop watching this video because it will just be a waste of your time. So, how do we ensure we are conscious of our food waste to create a better future? One word: empathy. This is the key to nourishing our community. We must stand in each other's shoes so we can get a better sense of what we are going through. Empathy is so powerful as it allows us to really know when to help others. We will form a better connection, and this will improve the lives of others around us. If that is not nourishment, then I have no clue what is. I mean, why do we help others? We do this because we feel for them. If we think about others and have empathy, we will be able to help others and improve lives more often. By doing this, we will be able to work together more efficiently and we will be able to achieve our goals as a community. I mean, you cannot do this by yourself.
Many have been touched by the pandemic, as the pandemic has caused many discrepancies, especially in the food industry, where it is vital that truckers quickly deliver food and medicine so there aren't any shortages like we saw in the early stages of the pandemic worldwide. Limiting your food waste helps with the environment. It also decreases chances of a food shortage at your local grocery store, while at the same time you aren't spending as much money. $165 billion of food is wasted each year in the US, and the food waste worldwide equates to 6% of the CO2 produced each and every year. This is problematic and needs to be addressed, whether that be by the local, state, or federal government. With the help of the individual, push yourself to limiting how much food you waste by buying less food or at least donating the surplus food you have to food banks. I am telling you, if you have a surplus of food or have at least some money to spare, please donate it to your local food bank, as there are nearly 1.1 million food insecure people in New York City, according to www.foodbanknyc.org, and 50 million nationwide, up from 35 million before the pandemic, according to www.feedingamerica.org. There are only so many farms and factories that can support the amount of food we, the growing human population, use, as well as waste. This is why it is important that people maximize the food they buy and eat, and help solve the inequalities when it comes to food deserts and poor, predominantly Black communities that have suffered years of lingering inequalities in the U.S. Log on to www.foodbanknyc.org to find out how you can help. If in need of food, this website has an interactive map that allows you to find the nearest food bank in the New York City area. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Yarden Rave, and this is my food waste documentary. After the Civil War, much of the southern United States was destroyed, such as farms, plantations, and houses. This left everybody with nothing. Abraham Lincoln proposed the Reconstruction Plan. With this Reconstruction Plan, the absence of cash or food led to the creation of sharecropping. Sharecropping was a system where the landlord/planter allowed a tenant to use the land in exchange for a share of the crop. This encouraged tenants to work to produce the biggest harvest that they could. They ensured that they would remain tied to the land and unlikely to leave for other opportunities. In the South, many Black families rented land from white owners and raised cash crops such as cotton, tobacco, and rice. This system helped bring families food and the nourishment they needed. Because without the system, people would die out of sickness because of lack of nourishment and hunger. Food waste has become a problem for many years that is affecting our planet, which is affecting us and starving countries. Food is being wasted for a variety of reasons, such as overproduction, overpricing in supermarkets, people not wanting to buy foods or throwing out foods because they are misshapen, have a different color, and are ugly. These all lead to bigger problems than we all might think. For example, when we throw out food into our garbage, this food is getting taken to landfills, which get burned and produced into methane. Methane is a colorless, odorless, and highly flammable gas composed of 1 carbon atom and 4 hydrogen atoms. When this is burned in the existence of oxygen, it produces carbon dioxide and water vapor. Methane is used to produce heat and electricity. When this gas is let out into the air, it is being trapped in the atmosphere. This all leads to climate change, respiratory diseases, weather changes, an increase in wildfires, and a decrease in foods. We need to end the cycle of food waste so countries and people can stay nourished and not ravenous. We need to make a change so our earth is healthy again. Let's list some ways we can end food waste. In Living Environment, we watched videos and found smart, successful ways we could end the cycle of food waste. For example, we could start growing our own produce in our homes, backyards, or on rooftops of buildings. We could start composting surplus foods in homes and even in schools, so all these foods don't end up in landfills. Last example is that every time you go to the supermarket, you make a list of food that you know you and your family will eat or use. If we all come together and use these ideas, we can indefinitely end food waste and let starving countries a chance to be nourished and healthy. All these examples and ideas come with no cost. We all just need your input on this. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you liked my documentary.
Food waste is a big problem in our world, so we have to think of different ways we can deal with this issue and reduce the food waste that we create. Here are some ways we can do this. For example, we cannot overbuy food. You have to make sure that what you're buying is enough for you and that you can finish what you're getting. This way, there is no food that is thrown away. And if you do throw away food, you have to make sure that the food is thrown in the right bin. This also goes with how much you put on your plate when you eat. Another way involves shopping at the grocery store. When you buy food, people tend to think that ugly fruits and vegetables aren't good for eating. But this just isn't the case because it doesn't matter what it looks like. It will all taste the same and it's just as good for you. Additionally, what we can do is we have to make sure that the food we are storing away is stored properly. If you do not make sure it is, the food will go bad and you end up throwing it away. If it is stored the right way, the food will still be good to eat later on. Using this information will lower the food waste percentage. Not only can we make a difference, but restaurants can too. To avoid wasting food in restaurants, people cannot overstock the food that they get. Even though you think you may use the ingredients, you still have to make sure that nothing is wasted. This is similar to one of the methods that we can use. Something else that restaurants can do is ask customers if they want to take any leftovers. When there is still a lot of food on someone's plate, it is best to ask them if they want to take it home so that it can be finished later. One last thing that can be done is use food waste as decorations. Not only is this a creative way of using food waste, but it can attract people into coming to that restaurant and use more food that has not been cooked yet.
Hi, it's Callie Ward from 8D, and this is my PSA for What's on My Plate. What is hydroponics and urban gardening? One of the bigger problems in lower income neighborhoods is access to a nutritional diet. Even if there were proper grocery stores, which isn't a certainty, those stores don't have access to fresh produce. This phenomenon is known as a food desert and it applies to over 23.5 million Americans. But what if I told you that you could grow your own salad from the ledge of your window? You can! One great solution which helps address food deserts is the use of hydroponics and/or urban gardening. After being shown a place at the table in our ELA class where we were introduced to food deserts, it is impossible not to be empathetic towards this issue. In the video, we meet Ray, a cook and mom of 2 boys in Jonestown, Mississippi. She explains the frustration of often not being able to have fresh fruits and vegetables since they only have 3 grocery stores in their town and none of them have fresh produce. She mentions they're super lucky if one of the stores even has a banana. In order for her and her family to have fresh produce, she would drive 45 minutes to and from another town to get it. If you add up the cost of gas in addition to buying groceries, it's way too expensive and inconvenient. Not to mention that without a car, fresh produce wouldn't even be an option. There is a solution, however: hydroponics. Hydroponics enables urban gardening, which allows people to grow their own produce, vegetables, lettuce, fruit, etc. Hydroponics is a smart, efficient method of growing plants that uses less resources, water and soil, and doesn't require as much space. In hydroponics, gardening requires 20 times less water than soil-based gardening. It also uses 20% less space for growing. You don't even need to have sunlight in order to grow with hydroponics if you have the correct LED lighting for the plant and the plants are in a warm environment. There are multiple hydroponics systems, such as the tower garden, nutrient film technique, and vine crop system. The tower garden is made up of a long plastic tube with lights on the sides, a large reservoir at its base where the nutrients are added that the plants need, and a small pump inside the reservoir which pushes the nutrient-filled water up through a hose inside the tower to the top of the system. This pump is on a timer and is only turned on when the plants need water. Once at the top, the nutrient solution drips from the shower cap, falling in all the plant roots that are exposed inside the column. This system continues to recirculate the water. The next type of system is the nutrient film technique, which is the most common hydroponic system. It consists of a reservoir which is filled with rainwater and nutrients, supply line which pushes the water up to the drip line, a drip line that goes to the top of the channel where the plants take in what they need. The water flows down the channel to the discharge and finally into the reservoir again to repeat the procedure. Finally, the vine crop system is made up of the lights above the plants on the ceiling, a reservoir holding all the nutrient-filled water, a pump inside the reservoir that pushes the water up, also on a timer, a pipe that gets water from the pump, pushes it along the length of the system, and tubes that deliver it to the individual plants. The bucket is what holds each plant. Strings are what support the plants from each bucket as they grow towards the light. The drain pipe brings the water back to the reservoir from the plants, and then the cycle can be repeated. Using these hydroponic systems, we can address food deserts because they require less resources, less space, and less sunlight, possibly just a proper LED light. Hydroponics makes urban gardening possible in much smaller spaces than traditional soil-based gardening, even in an apartment. This effort can be scaled up or down depending on need. If you have one family in isolation, proper nutrition could be grown in a single apartment or household, maybe even a small space as small as your windowsill. If one is looking to address the fresh produce needs of an entire building, neighborhood, or community, the system could be scaled up considerably. For example, a community greenhouse could be set up on a building rooftop or in an abandoned building. With a little organization and community effort, this could become a reality. I challenge you to raise awareness about hydroponics and explain to people how efficient and easy it is. They might need it. If you really feel passionate about this, maybe you could help raise money for people in local food deserts to be able to have a community hydroponic greenhouse. These are my sources.
Hi, I'm Anna Fidel, and I'm here to talk about food waste. Food waste is the leftover food that we don't eat that builds up and ends up in landfills. Now, this might not seem that bad, but in reality, there are so many complications that come with this food waste. When the food waste stays in the landfills, it doesn't get a chance to decompose, so it rots and produces methane, which can literally take carbon out of the air and contribute to climate change. And that isn't all. Food waste also wastes about 1/4 of our water supply in the form of uneaten food. In America alone, we throw away $165 billion when food is wasted. Why is food waste happening, you may ask? Well, the answer isn't exactly simple. There are so many different reasons. 1. When you go to the grocery store, do you pick up the slightly dented apple or the carrot that has a giant bump on its side for a salad? I'm going to assume your answer is no. That's one of the reasons right there. You aren't alone. Many people don't purchase weirdly shaped foods in the fear that they are harmful and think that they will taste bad or different. But here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with that carrot or apple. It probably just grew on its side or next to a wall. Another reason is quite similar to the weird shaped food fears. They are called best by or expiration dates. They practically impact everything we buy and consume. People throw out food when the best by dates were yesterday or when the expiration date was last week. But guess what? They aren't accurate measures of when the food is good. They are labels that simply say when the food is freshest, not when it's going to poison you. And yet, there is one more thing that contributes to food waste. It is the most obvious reason of all: buying too much. Sometimes we buy too much food or end up not needing the chocolate-covered pretzels after all, so it ends up in the trash. Sometimes we even take too much food on our plates and throw the rest in the trash. Horrible, right? What if I told you there are ways to fix this? Let me explain. There are some organizations that help with reducing food waste, one of them being City Harvest. City Harvest is a non-profit organization that helps by redistributing food to communities in need instead of throwing it away. City Harvest is quite similar to the Freedmen's Bureau, which was a government agency that provided housing and food to freed enslaved people so they could get back on their feet. The only difference is that City Harvest distributes food and helps reduce the food waste in our community. Go to cityharvest.org to help. As well as City Harvest, there is another way to help resolve food waste, and that is called hydroponics. Hydroponics are systems that grow plants without soil and with nutrient-filled water. Now, these systems tend to be a bit expensive, so there is a more efficient way to grow from your home. Instead of throwing out that apple core, take out the seed and plant it.
You can regrow the apple from that very seed by putting it on a wet paper towel, in a plastic bag, or even in a cube plug, which is a reusable cube of a substance that looks like soil but is compost. There are limitless possibilities to help food waste, so please, help today in any way you can.
Food waste is a big issue in America, and we need to find a way to reduce it. Food waste is the amount of food that us people throw away every day. The average American throws away 20 pounds of food each month, creating a whopping 240 pounds throughout the entire year. With the 331 million people living in the US, all this food waste adds up, generating over $165 billion worth of food waste. And having such a large population leads to some people being left hungry, some more than others. Places that don't have lots of access to affordable and healthy foods are called food deserts. These areas and cities don't have nearby supermarkets or farmers markets and require them to travel in cars or trains just to get to the nearest one. One way that we can reduce the amount of food deserts in the US is that we can build farms and hydroponics gardens that can grow and produce fresh produce for the people in that food desert. Hydroponics is a simple way of farming without requiring lots of space and land. This way of farming is something that can be taught and handled by families in their backyards or even inside by a window, as they don't require much space. Just when you thought that food waste only contributed to food deserts, you guessed wrong. Food waste also contributes to climate change and global warming, one of the largest problems in the past 20 years of humanity. When all of this food waste is piled up at landfills, it releases a fossil fuel called methane. This gas, along with carbon dioxide and gas for cars, all contributes to climate change. Since lots of people don't believe in climate change and aren't doing anything to try and stop it, lots of backlash arose. Many protests began all across the world trying to address the problem of climate change to people that don't agree or don't believe it. All of these protesters wanted is to stop climate change and to restore our planet to the way it used to be. In conclusion, food waste has had a greater toll on the country and on the world than what people can see.
Many food that gets thrown away in the trash ends up in landfills. Food thrown away in landfills creates a chemical known as methane, which traps 10 times more heat than carbon dioxide. Methane is made up of hydrogen and carbon, which makes up 90 to 98% of landfill gas. Methane that is released into the atmosphere before it is burned is harmful to the environment because of its ability to trap heat in the atmosphere. This is why throwing away food in the trash is bad. By composting wasted foods and other organics, methane emissions are significantly reduced. Compost eliminates the need for chemical fertilizers and can be used to remedy soils contaminated by hazardous waste, therefore being good for the environment. Hazardous waste is harmful, just like the Reconstruction era was. The Reconstruction era required segregated schools and allowed discrimination in the distribution of school funds to white and black schools. As you can see, people of color were treated very poorly, just like how the earth is being treated poorly by people who are careless. A solution to help stop foods from going to landfills is to have lots of restaurants and stores that sell food and have a place to eat should all have compost bins, and any food that customers throw away should go in a compost bin. That way, no food will end up in landfills because it is being thrown in the compost bin and not the trash. This will help lower methane emissions in the atmosphere. An organization that is helping to reduce food waste is City Harvest. You can go to cityharvest.org and donate money now to help.
How New Yorkers can help those in need regarding food. Food insecurity. What comes to your mind when you think of that word? Well, if you say anything about how food insecurity is a problem, and where people don't have access to nutrition and safe foods in their households, you're correct. People lost their jobs and opportunities because of COVID-19, causing financial difficulties and limited food options. Because of COVID-19, schools shut down. This resulted in the loss of nutritional school lunches for many kids. 1 in 4 children and 1 in 6 adults are facing food insecurity. This results in 50 million Americans experiencing hunger.
This is a big issue in the United States and needs to be fixed. You can donate $1 and that provides 5 meals, or you can donate $1 a day and that provides 150 meals every month. Another way to help is by creating or donating to a virtual food drive. In a virtual food drive, it's a virtual page that has foods such as vegetables, chickens, fruits, and other nutritional options. People could then donate money or pick out food they want to give. Additionally, using hydroponic kits will help you produce healthy and nutritional foods such as vegetables. You can then donate those foods to people in need or eat them for yourselves. It's not just the big things like money that matter. Writing a kind and heartfelt letter will make a big impact as well. Here's a sample letter to help you. Dear friend, as a volunteer with Food Bank for New York City, I just wanted to reach out and to personally wish you and your loved ones all the best during this challenging time. We want you to know that your neighbors are thinking of you and we are here to help. We hope you are staying safe and are looking ahead to a time when New York City will bounce back stronger than ever. Best wishes, a fellow New Yorker. The letter should be written anonymously, but you're also welcome to use a real name. I hope we all do our part to help New Yorkers get the food they need, whether it's creating an online fundraiser, donating to food banks, or writing a letter. Anything can make a difference.
In New York alone, 3.9 million tons of food waste is produced. That is an unbelievable amount. That's the amount of food waste being thrown into landfills. Since the start of quarantine, less food waste is being produced due to the lack of activity in food markets and shops. Wasting food now is not an option due to the worldwide pandemic occurring. There's still a wild amount of food waste produced every day in New York alone. If we New Yorkers work together to come up with a solution to decrease the amount of food waste, our earth quality would be so much better. There would be less food insecure households and less heat being trapped in our landfills. We humans need food nourishment, and the nutrients we get from foods is vital. By wasting food, we are slowly cutting off our resources and decreasing the chances of feeding a food insecure family. Every pound of food wasted could have been used to feed a family in need, but we choose to waste, and now our world is in danger. The increasing amounts of heat being caused by landfills is a major cause of climate change in our world. After food is wasted, the food gets put into trucks and then tossed into landfills, increasing our world's heat and damage. If that's not enough to convince you on the worldwide issue, then maybe this will. According to hungersolutionsnewyork.org, over 10% of New York is experiencing hunger, which may seem like a small number, but is very large compared to other places. To put this into perspective, there are around 19.45 million people in New York State, and there are about 92,000 homeless people without food. When we subtract the population of homeless people to the population of people in New York State, we will be able to identify the ratio. During the Reconstruction era,
During battles,
food waste was much less because they needed nutrients and energy to fight battles. On the other hand, during the Civil War, due to violence, many crops were smashed and animals were slaughtered, which cut off some resources. Lastly, the crazy amount of food waste we are producing is affecting the flow of our ecosystems. With all of the heat being trapped in food waste, the resources and future for our organisms to produce nutrients and energy is in danger.
during the pandemic, most places that provide food have been closed off or unable to access. The impact of this in New York led to 1.2 million New Yorkers going through food insecurity, including 1 in 5 New York City children. In hopes of bringing the rates down, there are many organizations that are contributing to helping food insecure families. Organizations like feedingamerica.org have food banks located in NYC. All you have to do is click on the website and put in your location in the Find a Food Bank tab. I'm now going to present a video from the news that talks about people in similar situations and how organizations are helping to provide for them.
The $170 million emergency food program the mayor announced Wednesday couldn't have come at a better time. Lines at food pantries and soup kitchens have been lengthening for weeks. The mayor's plan contains $25 million to make sure the pantries are stocked. Armando Villanueva says he doesn't know how he'll be feeding his family otherwise.
There are other organizations that have food banks in New York, like foodbanknyc.org, cityharvest.org, and more. If you have a device for use, simply just search up food banks in NYC. Another way to get food is by growing it in your own home. When you buy a hydroponic kit that contains basil, kale, Swiss chard, and etc.,
You're able to cook it after growing them. Not only will it be efficient, but it can be fun as well, seeing your plant grow over time. Also, all you need is some cocoa coir and some seeds. Just make sure that they're getting enough nutrients to grow. It may be hard for a lot of food insecure families during the COVID, but there are many people to give a helping hand.